The marketplace on Station Vexera hummed with the chaotic energy of 1,000 worlds colliding. Merchants from the spiral arm displayed shimmering fabrics that changed color with thought. Crystalline beings from the deep reaches sang their wares into existence. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a human child laughed. Her name was Maya Chen. 7 years old, with dark eyes that reflected every wonder the galaxy had to offer. She stood before a vendor selling what looked like living flowers, each petal breathing softly in colors that didn't exist on Earth. Her father, Dr. James Chen, stood 3 stalls away. Negotiating for medical supplies for their colony ship, Maya reached out with the universal curiosity of childhood, wanting to touch, to understand, to connect. The flower shifted toward her small hand. "Don't touch that filth." The voice cut through the marketplace noise like a blade through silk. Ambassador Zelthera of the Corvinthi Empire stood over Maya, her forearms crossed in disgust. Her chitinous face twisted in contempt. The Corvinthi had ruled the Galactic Council for 3,000 years, and they wore their superiority like a second skin. "Sorry," Maya said softly, pulling her hand back. "I just wanted to see." The slap came without warning. Zelthera's primary hand struck the child across the face with enough force to send Maya sprawling onto the station's cold floor. Blood trickled from her nose. The marketplace fell silent in an instant. 200 species, 1,000 beings, and not one made a sound. "Learn your place, Deathworlder," Zelthera hissed. "Your kind are barely civilized. You don't belong here." Dr. Chen moved faster than most beings thought humans could. He scooped Maya into his arms, his face a mask of controlled fury. But he didn't strike back. He didn't shout. He simply held his daughter close and walked away. Her quiet sobs the only sound in that vast space. The marketplace slowly returned to its noise. Vendors began calling again. The Corvinthi ambassador smoothed her robes and continued her inspection as if nothing had happened. The galaxy moved on. But in that silence, something had broken. Word travels fast in space. Faster than light, some said, riding on quantum waves and Ansible networks that connected every corner of civilized space. Within an hour, footage from a dozen recording devices showed Maya's fall. Her blood on the station floor, Zelthora's contempt. Within 6 hours, every human colony, ship, and settlement had seen it within 12 hours. The Galactic Council received a transmission. It came from Earth, from the United Human Assembly. The message was simple, delivered by Secretary General Maria Santos. Her voice was calm, measured, professional. "We request a formal inquiry into the assault of one of our children by Ambassador Zelthara. We expect appropriate consequences and a public apology. You have 72 hours to respond." The council barely glanced at it. The Corvinthi had diplomatic immunity. Humans were newcomers, barely a century into galactic society. They had no fleet to speak of, no economic leverage, no ancient alliances. They were tolerated, not respected. The council sent a polite refusal. These things happen in crowded spaces, they said. Perhaps better parental supervision was needed. The matter was closed. That was their first mistake. 40-8 hours later, every human merchant ship in galactic space simultaneously changed course. 3,000 vessels, carrying everything from medicine to rare earth elements. From agricultural supplies to entertainment media, they didn't go home. They simply stopped trading with council species. "Minor inconvenience," the council declared. "They'll come back when they need credits." But humans had learned something during their early years in space. They had learned patience. They had learned to remember. And they had learned that some things matter more than money. The ships didn't come back. More transmissions arrived from human space, this time from civilian organizations. The Stellar Medical Corps withdrew all human doctors from council stations. The Educational Exchange Program recalled every human teacher. Human engineers stopped taking contracts. Human artists pulled their work from galleries. One by one, quietly and without drama, humans began to leave. "Let them go," Zelthera told the council. "We survived for millennia before their arrival. We'll survive their departure." They're emotional creatures, acting like wounded animals. They'll calm down. That was their second mistake. Because humans weren't leaving out of spite or rage. They were leaving because they had remembered something fundamental about themselves. Something that evolution had carved into their bones during a million years on a death world where everything wanted to kill them. They had remembered that they took care of their own in the observation deck of Station Vexera. Dr. Chen held Maya's hand and watched the stars. Her nose had healed, but something in her eyes had changed. She had learned that the universe could be cruel, that not everyone smiled back when you smiled at them.
"Daddy,"
she whispered. Why did she hate me? I didn't do anything. James Chen knelt down to his daughter's level, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes, Maya, people are afraid of things they don't understand. And sometimes they mistake our kindness for weakness. Are we weak? He looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between them, at the tiny lights of human ships moving in the void. No, sweetheart, we're not weak. We're just patient. And that's very different. Behind them, unnoticed, a countdown had begun. Asterisk, the Awakening 3, weeks after the incident. The galactic economy began to notice the absence, not with a crash or a collapse, but with 1,000 small inconveniences that grew into larger problems. Medical stations discovered that their trauma protocols had been written primarily by human doctors, who understood violent injury better than any species that had evolved in gentler worlds. Without their expertise, mortality rates climbed. Agricultural colonies found that human crop rotation, techniques, and soil management had boosted their yields by 40%. Without human agronomists, they reverted to older, less efficient methods. Food prices rose. Entertainment networks realized that 70% of their most popular content had human creators involved somewhere in the production chain. The humans who wrote stories about hope and struggle, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Their absence left a void that algorithms couldn't fill, but the council remained confident. Economies adapt, they said. Markets correct, and humans would eventually need the galactic community more than the community needed them. They didn't understand that humans had been preparing for exactly this moment since they first left Earth. Ambassador Khalid Hassan stood before the Galactic Council, representing humanity in the place where Zelfara had once struck a child. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Exactly the sort of human the Council preferred to deal with, reasonable, civilized. "We come here today not to make demands," Khalid said, his voice carrying through the Council chamber, "but to make you understand what you've done." "We've done nothing," Council Chairwoman Vexith replied, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of dismissal. "A minor incident has been blown entirely out of proportion. Your people's withdrawal is economic self-harm." Khalid smiled, and something in that smile made the Council uneasy. "You see it as economic. We see it as a reminder. A reminder of what? Of who we are." He gestured, and the chamber's main display came to life. Images filled the space above them, not of weapons or threats, but of Earth. A blue marble covered in water and wrapped in storms. Mountains that scraped the sky. Deserts that could cook flesh. Oceans filled with creatures that hunted in darkness. Ice caps where temperatures dropped low enough to shatter stone. "This is our home," Khalid said quietly. "Every other species in this chamber evolved on worlds with stable climates, with gentle predators, with civilizations that grew slowly over millennia. You had time to become wise before you became powerful." More images. Early humans huddled in caves, surrounded by predators with teeth longer than a child's arm. Humans crossing frozen wastelands. Humans surviving in jungles where the plants themselves could kill. We didn't have that luxury. We evolved alongside creatures that saw us as food. We survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions. We learned to hunt animals 10 times our size with nothing but sharp rocks and teamwork. By the time we invented agriculture, we had already conquered the most hostile environment the galaxy has ever produced. "We know your history," Vexith said impatiently. "That's why you're called Deathworlders. That's why we tolerate your aggressive tendencies." "Tolerate," Khalid repeated softly. That's an interesting word. He changed the display. Now it showed human ships. Not the massive military vessels the Council feared might one day threaten galactic peace, but colony ships, medical frigates, cargo haulers, thousands of them, moving through space in coordinated patterns. For 100 years, we've been trying to fit into your galaxy. We've followed your rules, adopted your customs, learned your languages. We've been patient. We've been kind. We've traded our expertise for acceptance. The display shifted again. Maya Chen's face filled the chamber, showing the moment of impact, the blood, the tears. And then one of your ambassadors struck one of our children. Not in war, not in self-defense, but because she saw a curious little girl as beneath contempt. The council chamber remained silent. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. You asked what we're reminding ourselves of, Khalid continued. We're reminding ourselves that we're Deathworlders. Not because we enjoy violence, but because we survived a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to protect our young above all else. We learned that threats to our children are threats to our species. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Vexith's voice took on a harder edge. No, Chairwoman. It's a warning. You've mistaken our kindness for weakness. You've mistaken our patience for submission. And you've forgotten that humans remember. The display changed one final time. Now it showed Earth's history in fast forward. Civilizations rising and falling. Empires that conquered worlds then crumbled to dust. Wars that consumed continents. Peace that lasted generations. Humans building, destroying, rebuilding, learning. We know how to endure, Khalid said. We've done it for 300,000 years. We can wait. We can adapt. We can survive without you much more easily than you can survive without us. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. No. But here's what you need to understand. We don't want to leave. We don't want to be separate. We came to the stars hoping to find community, to find friends, to build something beautiful with you. We brought our art and our medicine and our stories because we wanted to share them. What? His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. All we ask is that you don't hurt our children. Is that really too much? The silence that followed lasted for exactly 17 seconds. Then Chairwoman Vexith spoke, and her voice carried a note that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty. What do you want, Ambassador Hassan? An apology. A real one, not a diplomatic non-statement. From Ambassador Zelthera to Maya Chen, in person. And a guarantee that no child, human or otherwise, will ever be struck in a council space again without immediate consequences. Ambassador Zelthera has diplomatic immunity, then revoke it. Or we're done here. Not just economically, culturally, socially, humanity will turn inward, and you'll lose everything we brought to your civilization. Our stories, our music, our hope, our hope. Vexith's form flickered with confusion. Khalid nodded slowly. That's what you've really been buying from us all along. You didn't realize it, but it's what your people crave in our art, our media, our presence. Your species have been civilized so long that you've forgotten what it means to struggle and overcome. You've forgotten what it means to face impossible odds and find a way through. He gestured to the displays showing human history. We remember, and we've been sharing that memory with you. But if you won't protect our children, then you don't deserve our hope. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for compliance, worried about the economic impact. Others defended ancient protocols and diplomatic immunity. But slowly, as the hours passed and the arguments circled, a truth emerged. Humanity had changed the galaxy in ways no one had fully understood, and losing that might hurt more than anyone wanted to admit. Asterisk, the trembling ambassador Zelthara stood in a private chamber, watching the council debate through a privacy screen. For 3,000 years, her species had led. They had set the rules. They had decided who mattered and who didn't. And now a species barely a century removed from there. Homeworld was making the council question everything. This is absurd, she muttered to her aide, a younger Corvanthy named Rathix. One child. One moment. And they threatened to append galactic society? Rathik said nothing. He had been watching the human networks, seeing the response from their worlds. What he saw troubled him. Ambassador, he said carefully, I think you should see something. He brought up a feed from Earth's main communication network. A simple program, a news segment, nothing official. But it showed something that made Zelthera's forehands clench. Children, human children. Thousands of them in every city, every colony, every station. They weren't protesting. They weren't angry. They were simply sitting in silence, wearing blue ribbons tied around their wrists. Maya's color. It's called a memorial, Rathix explained. They're not mourning her death. She survived, after all. They're mourning the innocence she lost. The trust in the galaxy that was broken. Sentimental nonsense, Zelthera said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Rathix pulled up more feeds. Their parents stand with them. Their teachers. Their doctors. Every human in space has stopped what they're doing for 1 hour every day to sit in silence with their children. They call it remembering Maya. Zelthera watched in growing unease as the feeds multiplied. Millions of humans, sitting together, silent, not in rage, not in threat, in solidarity. They're showing us something, Rathik said quietly. They're showing us what they value most, and they're showing us what happens when you threaten it. They can't sustain this. Eventually, they'll need ambassador. Rathix's tone made her stop. They're Deathworlders. Sustainability is what they do best. They survived on a world that tried to kill them for 300,000 years. They can survive a few decades of economic isolation if they have to. For the first time in her long career, Zelthara felt something she hadn't experienced before. Not fear, exactly, but recognition. The understanding that she had made a profound mistake. What do they really want? She asked. I think Rathik said slowly, they want you to understand that their children matter. Not as a policy statement, not as a diplomatic position, but as a truth carved into their bones. Touch a human child, and you've declared war on their entire species. Not a war of weapons, but something far more dangerous. What could be more dangerous than war? Memory. Humans never forget who hurt them. More importantly, they never forget who hurt their young. You could live another 1,000 years, Ambassador, and somewhere, a human would still know your name. Still remember what you did to Maya Chen. Zelthera turned away from the displays, her chitinous face unreadable. But inside, something shifted. 2 hours later, the council reached a decision. It wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. Ambassador Khalid Hassan received the notification with a simple nod. They've agreed to your terms, Chairwoman Vexith informed him. Ambassador Zelthera will apologize in person. We're also implementing new protocols for the treatment of minors in council spaces. Any assault on a child, regardless of species, will result in immediate revocation of diplomatic status. And Zelthera. She will retain her position after the apology. But she understands that this is her final chance. The Corvinthi government has made that very clear. Khalid nodded slowly. It wasn't everything he had hoped for, but it was enough. More importantly, it was real. The apology took place in the same marketplace where the incident had occurred. Security kept the crowds back, but thousands watched through feeds and displays. Zelthera stood before Maya Chen, who held her father's hand tightly. I was wrong, Zelthera said, and the words seemed to cost her greatly. I let old prejudices guide my actions. I hurt you because I saw you as less than me, when the truth is that I was the one who was less. Less patient, less kind, less wise. She knelt down, bringing her forearms to the ground in the Corvinthi gesture of deepest apology. I am sorry. Maya Chen, not because the council demands it, but because I have learned what it means to harm a child in a species that values their young above all else. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I will understand if you cannot. Maya looked up at her father. Dr. Chen squeezed her hand, but said nothing. This was her choice to make. The 7-year-old studied Zelthera for a long moment. Then she said, my dad says that people make mistakes sometimes. He says the important thing is if they learn from them. I will learn, Zelthera said quietly. I promise you that. Maya nodded slowly. Then she did something that made the entire galaxy hold its breath. She reached out and gently touched one of Zelthera's primary hands. "Then I forgive you," she said simply. The marketplace erupted in sound. Not cheers exactly, but a collective release of tension that had built over weeks. Somewhere in human space, millions of children removed their blue ribbons. The memorial was over, but the lesson remained. 3 months later, Ambassador Khalid Hassan gave his final address to the Galactic Council before rotating back to Earth. He spoke of cooperation, of understanding, of the bright future ahead. But he ended with words that would be quoted for generations. He came to the stars hoping to find family. We found commerce, politics, diplomacy, all important things. But what happened to Maya Chen taught us something crucial. It taught you who we are, and it taught us who we must be. He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled species. We are humanity. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, and we responded not with cruelty, but with cooperation. We learned that protecting the weak, especially our children, was the key to survival. And we never ever forgot that lesson. You call us Deathworlders, and you're right, but you misunderstand what that means. We're not dangerous because we're violent. We're dangerous because we remember, because we adapt, because we endure, and because when you hurt one of ours, especially a child, all of humanity feels it. He smiled then, that gentle smile that had become so familiar. But here's the beautiful part. We also remember kindness. We remember cooperation. We remember who stood with us, who learned from mistakes, who grew alongside us. And we never forget our friends either. The chamber remained silent as he gathered his things. The galaxy trembled when you hurt Maya Chen. Not because we threatened war, but because you realized, finally, what it means to be human. We protect our own. We never give up. And we always remember. But we also forgive. We also build. We also hope. He walked toward the exit, then paused. The choice of what kind of galaxy we build together is still yours to make. We've shown you who we are. Now we wait to see who you choose to be. Back on Station Vexera, in a small apartment overlooking the marketplace, Maya Chen did her homework under her father's watchful eye. She was learning algebra now, and struggling with it the way all children do. "Daddy," she asked, looking up from her tablet, "did I do the right thing? Forgiving her?" Dr. Chen set down his medical journal and smiled at his daughter. "What do you think?" I think she was really sorry. I think maybe she'll be nicer to other kids now than you did." "Exactly right." He pulled her close. "You know what makes you braver than any soldier, Maya? You faced someone who hurt you, and you chose kindness anyway. That's the hardest thing in the universe to do. It's harder than algebra." He laughed. "Well, maybe not that hard." As father and daughter returned to their evening routine, ships began to return to their normal routes. Human merchants resumed trade. Human doctors returned to their stations. Human artists released new works. The galaxy slowly normalized, but it was a different normal now, because everyone remembered Maya Chen. They remembered the little girl who was struck for being curious. And they remembered the species that stopped the galaxy to defend her. They remembered Ambassador Zelthora's apology, Maya's forgiveness. But most of all, they remembered the lesson. Humans were Deathworlders, not because they destroyed, but because they endured. They were dangerous not because they attacked, but because they never forgot their children. They were powerful not because of their weapons, but because of their unity. Touch a human child and the galaxy trembles. But earn a human's trust, and you gain a friend for life. The choice was clear. The galaxy was still learning which one to make. But for Maya Chen, 7 years old and already wiser than many adults, the lesson was simpler. She had learned that the universe could be cruel, yes. But she had also learned that courage and forgiveness could change it, as she finally solved her algebra problem and smiled in triumph. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity smiled with her. The Deathworlders had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk.